It works. Okay. It's really a tremendous pleasure to be here. This is my last year as chair of the advisory board. I took over after Kai. And it has been fantastic to follow the growth and the development of the CRG. The CRG is a very special institute. It has been run by very special people. You've heard many of the names. But the fact is that you have to have extremely good people in all the positions in an institute if it's going to survive, if it's going to flourish over a period of 10 years. So I was very, very happy when I received an email from Blanca asking me to provide a title for my presentation at the 10th anniversary seminar. The celebration. Then I forgot, of course, to send my title, like everybody else. And last Friday, I found the email, and I immediately sent off the title. I was going to talk about some work on nuclear envelope disassembly and the coordination of kinases and phosphatases. And I got this email where you could see this puzzled person in the background with a question mark over her head. Sort of, are you joking? Talk about science? We want you to talk about the Institute and about how it interacts with the EMBL. I was disappointed, but here it goes. You've heard that the Institute is set up on the EMBL model. There are multiple aspects of this model. The first thing is that EMBL has a complex set of missions. The missions are defined by the member countries who pay most of its budget. The critical one, the one in the center, is that it has to be able to do excellent basic research because everything else depends upon that. We provide services to the scientific communities. We develop and provide advanced training internally for people in EMBL and for the community. We're involved in instrument and technology development. We have quite a substantial fraction of people still working on technology development in the Institute. And both the research and the technology development lead to activity in technology transfer. We have a technology transfer company which is regarded as being very successful. And finally, we're the European research organization, laboratory and infrastructure organization in the life sciences. And we play a role in integrating activities in this area. So the Institute EMBL, as I said, is essentially supported to the level of 2/3 directly by its member states. We have 20 European member countries, and we have one associate member, Australia, which isn't quite European, which is why it's called an associate member rather than a member. The model is summarized on the right-hand side of this slide. Many international organizations suffer from the crippling policy that the countries who pay into it want to have out of it what's called juste retour. They want to get back out what they pay in. That is not how you set up an excellent organization. You have to provide your money and say, do the best that you possibly can if you want to have an excellent organization. And the member states of EMBL thus far, as for some of the other European intergovernmental organizations like CERN, have been very wise in not insisting on juste retour. That doesn't mean that they don't look at the retour, but it doesn't have to be exactly in proportion to what is paid in. We have a fixed-term contract system. The maximum contract is 9 years. normally. This is true for researchers, it's true for research support staff, it's true for the administration, it's true for the people who look after the kindergarten, it's true for everybody in the Institute. And so the Institute turns over and renews itself frequently. And this, of course, for a research institute is fantastic because you're always bringing in young people with new ideas. About 11% of our staff currently have rolling tenure contracts, and they're distributed again through all of these areas of the lab. That means 89% of the people are there for a maximum of 9 years. It's very international. We have 1,600 staff at the moment, and they come from more than 70 countries. Again, in a research environment, this is great because people with different educational backgrounds think about problems differently, and working together with different approaches is one of the ways to progress. The different missions that I talked about on the last slide, you might find would interfere with one another, but in fact they don't. They work synergistically. The services work with the research, the technology developers work with both the service and the research. Technology transfer, in other words, intellectual property, comes out of all parts of the laboratory. And of course, setting up new types of training programs, again, is excellent to support both the research and the service activities. As Kai mentioned, you need to have continuous quality control, so there are very strict review processes of all the activities. And the exchange, the quid pro quo for telling people that they have a maximum contract of 9 years is that you have to provide generous internal support. So again, Kai mentioned this. If you're going to expect people to do well and to succeed so they can find another good job within a period of 7 years roughly, you have to support them from the beginning intellectually. You have to make it possible for them to do things by providing core facility support, and you have to provide money so that they can get started quickly. And as I said, about 2/3 of our budget is internal funding, the rest is on competitive grants. EMBL is a distributed organization. We're on 5 sites. The sites are different from one another in focus and in they're all located, however, beside other organizations with whom they collaborate. The rationale of the distributed structure is, as I said, they have different foci. The idea of EMBL has to do something more than national research institutes, and that more includes involving large fractions of the community in our activities and providing services to these communities. Local interactions benefit both EMBL and the partners we interact with. We do, I'm not going to show you any data on this, but EMBL is an excellent research institute by all of these kind of markers and tables that you look at. EMBL is an extremely successful basic research organization. The model works. And it works in part because the distributed structure means, and formal programs we put in place mean that people work together across the sites. And this furball are joint publications or joint postdocs or joint grants between different faculty at the different sites of EMBL. And you can see that the organization, although it's distributed across Europe, is incredibly well linked. So, I just summarize here the service activities. 2 major services to the community are providing access to synchrotron beamlines, small angle X-ray scattering, etc. These are used by more than 3,000 people each year in Grenoble and in Hamburg. And the European Bioinformatics Institute is Europe's collection of biomolecular data. And currently, their website gets about 6.5 million web hits every day. There are about 3 million different users of the web pages of the EBI every year. It's an incredibly heavily used resource. And this is the library that anybody who's working on the life sciences needs and uses to do their work, whether they're in agriculture, whether they're in the medical world, whether they're in industry and pharma or in biotech, in the food industry, or they're in a basic research center. They need access to the data, and this institution provides it to them in Europe. Aside from that, we organize many training events and courses at EMBL. There are about 6,000 visitors to these conferences and courses each year at the different EMBL sites. And apart from this, about another 450 visitors each year who come for an average of 3 weeks to work at EMBL, many of them to use the core facilities that we have. So people tend to know EMBL because of its research, but it does other things. And this is the model that the member states want to export to national institutions. And this is the idea of the EMBL Partnership Program, to have a network of centers that work in similar ways. They don't have to be identical, but they have to work in similar ways based on this model. And this model, as I said, the major distinguishing feature of this model is turnover. And this is a slide I made at the end of 2010 when I was begging for more money from our member countries. And I was trying to illustrate what turnover means in terms of the faculty. And this was the funding period, the last EMBL funding period. We're the last communist economy. We work in 5-year plans. So this started in 2007, ended at the end of 2011. In mid-2010, by that time, 25% of the faculty had turned over in that term. And this is constant throughout the life of the Institute. And this is something which is necessary for the health of the Institute, and it is obviously not always easy, because these people are your colleagues, they're your friends. And this is the hard part that Miguel and now Luis have to enforce in order to keep the CRG a healthy institute with turnover in its scientific ideas, in its scientific personnel. And as I said, the proof that it works is the quality of the research that's done. And there are many other aspects of this which are listed on the other side of the slide. So the member states asked us, or many of them did, to set up partnerships to help export this model. Now, CRG was a particularly easy case because at that time, Miguel, who was in charge of the CRG, wanted to adopt this model. In our other partnerships in the Nordic countries, as Kai said, the Nordic countries in general have been doing very well in research. But in fact, their idea of a young independent researcher is somebody who's around 50 or 55. And so they wanted to use EMBL partnerships as a way to leverage independence for younger people. And so 3 of the Nordic countries, Norway, Finland, and Sweden initially, started EMBL partnerships. Denmark, in fact, the Danish node of this will start later this year. They're all between 6 and 12 groups in strength. They work like the CRG model that you've heard this morning, and they work actually also closely together in recruitment of postdocs as well as of group leaders. And a month ago, Luis and his colleagues here organized the first meeting of all the EMBL partnerships that have an interest in the interface between basic research and human disease. And so we had a meeting where this room was completely full for 3 days, where people from the different partnerships met each other, talked, and began to develop collaborations across the different partnerships. So the idea is to build a network of people, young people, who are independent and who find ways of finding other excellent partners who have common interests. And as you know, collaboration and internationalism are absolutely the fruits of good research. The partnership unit itself is inside the CRG. You've heard all of this stuff. This is just about the partnership unit with EMBL in the area of systems biology. It was created in 2006. 65% of the staff are not Spanish. We have participated in the recruitment of all the group leaders. 3 out of the 6 PIs have been awarded ERC grants. And they have, because it's a relatively new unit, in 2010 they had their first review after 4 years together with the cell biology program review by a panel of international systems biologists, if you can imagine what that looks like. And they were rated as being internationally outstanding and as one of the best, if not the best, systems biology programs in the world after 4 years. This is remarkable. The people, this is Luis Serrano. I noticed this morning that this photograph was obviously taken on the last day that he shaved when he woke up in the morning. Luis works on the design of biological systems. He's been assisted by senior scientist James Sharp. When Luis became director of the CRG, he formally moved out of the unit as director, and James is functioning as the director of the unit now. He's interested in developing systems, particularly organ and limb development, and he carries out a combination of developmental biology and methods development in imaging. Mark Isolan is interested in gene networks and in engineering gene networks, and this means engineering gene networks in vivo. It means setting up glass slides with gene networks working in vitro in biochemical systems. Ben Lehner is interested in the problem, but he actually works directly on the problem of the interaction between genotype and phenotype in various organisms. The most recently recruited members are Matthew Lewis, who's a neurobiologist working on sensory systems and behavior, and Jörg Jäger, who works on comparative analysis and modeling in developmental systems. So, in the context of the CRG, as well as in the context of EMBL, there is a lot of complementarity with what this unit does to what the other units of CRG or of EMBL do. And I've listed this up here, but I'm not going to read it out. And the proof that there are excellent interactions actually comes in the joint activities. I think probably the most spectacular of those in terms of success and output so far is the systems analysis of Mycoplasma pneumoniae, which has resulted in an incredible boost to our understanding of mycoplasma. The most surprising results is that mycoplasma, even though it's one of the simplest possible free-living organisms, is basically a eukaryote. It has the complexity of gene expression, gene regulation, metabolic regulation that you find in eukaryotes. It's much more eukaryote-like than would have been predicted at the beginning of the project. This approach has now been taken to Mycobacterium tuberculosis, again in collaboration with people from EMBL and elsewhere, I should say. These are broader projects. There are a series of joint grants between EMBL and the CRG. And perhaps the most ambitious current project which is underway is that one of the data resources that is held at the EBI and organized at the EBI is called the European Genome Phenome Archive. Basically, this is the archive of genetic variation in human populations and how it correlates with phenotype. And the plan here is to divide this huge task between the EBI, which is in Cambridge in the UK, and Barcelona, and to involve Roderick Gigo is very much involved in that, who's the head of the bioinformatics and genomics program here, in making this a joint activity in order to help to stabilize it. Because, of course, as you heard this morning from Illumina, although technology development is spectacular, keeping up with it is spectacularly difficult. And if you get all of these genomic sequence data informations, you have to do something with them for the community, otherwise they're completely useless. No matter how cheap they are, they're completely useless unless they're collected and annotated and studied in a way that can be useful for the whole community. And this is what the EGA does. This will be EBI and CRG, and there is a large-scale sequencing center, which is located, a national center, which is located in Barcelona, which again would be a natural partner for this, and that aspect of the partnership is in discussion, and we hope will be resolved soon. So, final slide. We have had a partnership with the CRG. The Spanish government has, the Spanish central government has funded this partnership. You heard that much of the funding, the internal funding of the rest of the CRG comes from the Catalonian government. Much of the competitive funding comes from Europe and from the national government. The partnership unit has been funded from the beginning by the central government. We've had very good interactions with the ministry, with Carmen and with her predecessor and with her colleagues. And the plan is to develop the CRG partnership into a full-fledged EMBL outstation and to make it part of this international laboratory. And this was Miguel's secret dream from the beginning of CRG, and I hope that we both live long enough to see this becoming a reality. Thank you very much.